Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to share with you my October wrap-up. So we're just gonna go through all of the books that I finished in October. I'm very happy to share these books with you. I did actually read quite a lot, so let's not waste time and get into it. So the first two books I finished in October, I actually finished on the 1st, and I'm pretty sure I talked about them in my last wrap-up just because it felt weird to talk about them now, because it's been like quite a while since I've read them. The first one of those is Kingdom of Copper. This is the second book in the Devabad trilogy. I was absolutely obsessed with this book and gave it 5 stars. I will talk a little bit more about the series in a second. And the other book was Belladonna by Adalyn Grace, and that one is a first book in a duology. I really liked it. It had like the creepy, spooky vibes. It's basically a romance with death, and I gave it 4 stars. Now, just to get it out of the way quickly, I finished Empire of Gold in October. This is the 3rd book in the Devabad trilogy, and after this like freaking 5-star read, I was really intrigued to see where the story would actually go. So I picked up the 3rd book immediately. In this series, we are following 2 characters. We are following Nachi, who is a poor girl who lives in Carrow, and she has some healing magic, but she's also sometimes just ripping people off. But then one day she actually summons a djinn and is brought to this magical city of Devabad because she has actually some djinn blood. And then we follow Ali, who is the prince of Devabad, and we follow their adventures. Now obviously in the 3rd book a lot has happened, a lot of time has passed. We have seen our characters grow, we have gotten to love them, and now this book is here to rip our hearts out. And yeah, I really enjoyed this series as a whole. I did a whole reading vlog about the trilogy if you're interested, especially if you've read it already, because I also go into my spoilery thoughts, but I also have some non-spoiler thoughts. So yeah, if you want to hear more about this series, definitely go check that out. In the end, I decided to give this last book 4.5 stars. I did really enjoy this, but nothing is as great as this book was. And just some of the resolutions seemed a little bit too easy for me in this last book. Then the next book I finished in October was Rules for Vanishing by Kate Ellis Marshall, and this is a YA horror book. It basically follows a girl whose sister has gone missing a year ago, and she is convinced that her sister went onto this ghost road which appears once a year, and you have to be in the right place at the right time so you can step onto the ghost road and you can walk it. And when you walk it, you have to get through a couple of gates. I think it is 7 gates, and then you can get off the road again and you're fine, which sounds very easy, but it's actually not. And I had this book on my TBR for a very long time, and I'm so glad I finally picked it up because it was actually a really great read for the Halloween time. I really enjoyed the characters. We do have a group of characters who try to find this sister of the main character together. Some of them are like really close friends, but they drifted apart after the sister disappeared, and some of these characters are also just curious about the ghost road and just tag along basically. This is definitely a series with very high stakes, so even though it is YA, you are not sure whether your characters are safe. And yeah, just the vibes, if you like creepy woods and just creepy environments, this is such a fun book because every gate basically has a different kind of creepy environment after it. So you have like a creepy town setting, you have a mansion, you have a what's it called, a lighthouse at sea and stuff like that. So it's like very different creepiness areas, and it's done really well because you have this kind of like file format. So you have transcripts of videos, you have interview transcripts and stuff like that, and listening to it on audio was a really fun experience as well. It was done really well with like multiple narrators, and I really enjoyed it and gave it 4 stars. And if you're ever interested in this YA horror, I would highly recommend you pick it up. Then the next book I finished was A Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power. This is the second book by this author I have read. I've already read Wilder Girls and really enjoyed it, but this book had gotten quite mixed reviews when it came out, so I never had it on my radar so much. But then I found it in the library and I thought this would be the perfect time to check it out. Now, in this book we follow a girl who also has no name because I'm just bad with names. Margaret, it's Margaret. That was not easy to find out. Okay, so we follow a girl called Margaret, and she has grown up with her mother, but they're in a very strained relationship. And Margaret always wanted to know where she comes from, where the rest of her family is, but her mother does not talk about it. But one day in summer, when her mom is at work, she actually finds an old Bible with a picture in it, and on this picture there is a phone number. So Margaret goes and calls this number and realizes that that's actually her grandmother, and now she knows where her grandmother lives, so she decides to just go there, and creepy stuff happens. Now the tagline of this is actually "There's a stranger with my face," so we have a little bit of a doppelganger thing going on here, and all the women in this family actually look pretty much alike. It's almost like they're yeah, doppelgangers, just different ages. So the question is, who is that girl who's actually dead with the face of the main character? Yeah, and this is more of a thriller. It does have some gore elements to it. I really enjoyed it. I think it is really fun, fast-paced. It has a kind of sapphic love story very much in the background. Nothing much happens there, but yeah, I really enjoyed this book. It was really, really fun, and I can't really say much else. I think that the twist at the end wasn't like the best, but it also was not like bad. I think it was actually quite creative, and yeah, if you ever feel like picking this up, I would say you can totally do that. But yeah, this book was actually not as bad as the reviews made it out to be, I think. Then the next book I finished was actually my disappointment of the month, and that was The Carrow Haunt by Darcy Coates. Now, I had already read 3 books by Darcy Coates before this one. The first one I really enjoyed, that was the Haunting of Blackwood House, but then the other 2 were kind of disappointing, and so I was like, okay, this is her last chance. Like, if this book is disappointing, then I will probably stop reading her. And The Carrow Haunt was disappointing, unfortunately. This book is a haunting story, as you could guess from the title. We basically have this main character, Remy, who leads tours through this like very haunted estate. And this estate was formerly a kind of a clinic, or like, I don't know, like where you can go if you're sick for like rich people, but then they turned it into a hotel. But a lot of horrible things have happened in this hotel, and yeah, at the end there was kind of an imposter, and he was then killed by a mob. But before that he lived there for many years and he killed a lot of people. So this is kind of the setting that we get presented. Because Remy is leading these tours, she can tell the whole backstory, so we pretty much know it from the first page, which is the first thing I wasn't really a fan of with this book. And then at the end of this tour, Remy gets the offer to spend 2 weeks with a group of like psychics and like YouTube ghost hunters and stuff like that in this house. And she accepts this offer. And so then we follow these characters, this group of characters, while they're at this place. Now we have the guy who brought them all together. He's some kind of a rich guy, but we don't really know what his motivation is for this whole thing. Then we have a psychic and her assistant. We have Remy, obviously. We have the owner of the house and her assistant, and the owner is actually like a 16-year-old girl who believes she is a psychic as well. And then we have this random old man who stays there, and one guy who is like a YouTube ghost hunter guy. And so they try to spend these 2 weeks there, but as you can imagine, things go horribly wrong. But with this book, I really understand why people say that Darcy Coates writes cozy horror, because it's not really scary at all. You have this like psychic medium who always reminds us that the ghosts can't touch you, the ghosts can hurt you, they can throw some stuff at you or something like that, but like nothing bad can actually happen. And so you're never scared for the characters. And there are a few like very creepy scenes, like not very creepy, like a little bit creepy scenes in there, like only a handful, I would say. But they don't really have any effect because you know that nothing's gonna come of it. So yeah, I found this to be quite disappointing. And even though I love the main character of Remy and I thought the way that she felt about her group and she wanted to protect everyone and stuff like that, it was cute. You actually get a little bit of romance sprinkled in there as well. So in the end, I gave it 3 stars because it had some nice elements, but it wasn't what I was looking for at all, unfortunately. So then the next book I finished is the book club pick for Riley Marie's Patreon, and that is House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. And I hadn't read Year of the Witching, which I had planned on reading for a very long time, but I just hadn't gotten around to it. So I decided to start with House of Hunger, even though I think that the premise of the Year of the Witching is more of my style, but oh well. The House of Hunger is a book that again follows a girl. It's again a sapphic, and we have this character who lives in very poor environments. She lost her parents very young, and she has an older brother who tried to take care of her, but he's now really sick and also a drug addict, so it's more her taking care of him now. And she gets the offer to be a blood maid, and that basically means you go to a court of a noble person and they will drink your blood. So that is not a very valued position, but our main character is like, fuck that, I'm gonna do it because I just want to get out of this poverty. So she takes the deal and she travels to the north of this world where these courts are, and she becomes a blood maid for the House of Hunger. And the kind of noblewoman who is the head of the house is Elisaveta, and no, it's just Lisaveta. And no, Elizabeth. I'm sorry, I always make Elisaveta out of it because of Dracula. I'm sorry, so it's Elizabeth. And yeah, and we don't really know what's her deal. And so we're spending some time with this character at the House of Hunger. This one is more like a gothic story, and I'm not always the biggest fan of those. They're usually just not creepy enough for me, and they're usually just very slow. Everything is building up very slowly. I think that House of Hunger is one of my more favorite ones of those stories, but I just never get quite what I want from them. So I did enjoy this book. I decided to give it 4 stars. It was really fun. I love the main character of Marion. She's really fierce. She's very strong. She doesn't pretend to be like a super good person, but she has her heart in the right place, and that's what we care about. There's also a cat in the story, and I wanna say right here, the cat is fine. The cat is fine. Nothing happens to the cat, because that's always something that I'm very worried about. But the cat is fine. Apart from that, we have Marion in this like court, and there is 4 other blood maids at the court when she gets there. So we also see her interact with these other blood maids. And then there is a sapphic relationship that slowly starts between her and Elizabeth. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It had definitely all the vibes, all the atmosphere. I think the favorite part for me was the world building. I thought that was so interesting, and I was actually quite sad that we spent all the time in the house then, because the way that Marion traveled from this like really yeah, fucked up city to the north by this train and stuff. Like all those descriptions were amazing. Like I loved that. So if we get more books set in this world, I will definitely read them. I think the kind of downfall of this book, apart from like not being quite what I want, is that the ending was a little bit rushed, and there were just some things in there that were like pure shock value but didn't make any sense for the story. So I felt like the ending could have been done much better, and that is the criticism I've heard quite a lot about this book, that the ending is just not quite up there. But yeah, it was really fun, and if you feel like picking up this kind of like vampire story, then I would definitely recommend it. Then the next book I finished was also a gothic tale, and that is Plain Bad Heroine by Emily and Danforth. And this is a book that I have been looking forward to for a while, but this is a chunker. This is over 600 pages, and knowing that it is a gothic tale, it has the slowest build-up ever. Now I know a lot of people absolutely love this book, and I had 5-star vibes with this. So I was quite disappointing to find that this was only a 4-star read for me, but it's still pretty good and fun. I do love stories that focus on movies and filmmaking, and in this book we are following 3 young women who are all involved in this movie that is supposed to be made about this girls' school from the 1900s that had some tragic stuff happen there and ultimately was closed. And these 3 young women are the 2 leading actors of that movie, and then the girl who wrote the book the movie is based on. But it's a non-fiction book, so the school actually existed. And while we get this story told, we also get the perspective of the woman who actually was the head of the school when it was open. So we have a kind of another storyline to this, and we learn what happened to the school as well. And obviously it's all connected somehow. Now, this book, if you go into this expecting that you will spend a lot of time at this like haunted, creepy school, you will be very disappointed, because you literally spend almost no time there at all. Like inside the building, no time at all. I promise you. You will see a little bit of the orangerie, which is where some of the stuff takes place. You will see some of the landscaping around the place, but most of this takes place very far away, somewhere in LA or something like that, like in Hollywood. So that was actually something I did not expect. I also found the kind of twist, the kind of resolution at the end to be not the best. I thought that it just didn't feel right. Something just didn't work for me there. I really liked the vibes. I did like the characters. I actually loved Libby, the head woman of the school. She was my favorite character, and I felt for her so much. Like honestly, if I had to live in that world, that's what would have happened to me. Let's just be real. And yeah, I just loved her. I also think that her storyline is the most interesting, and also the end of her story is the most interesting and the most scary in this whole book. Apart from that, there's not really a lot of like really horrible things happening. Like obviously some bad things happen in the historical timeline, because you know, you have to have the tale that the school is haunted. But with the now timeline, there's actually not a lot going on, to be honest. So don't expect this to scare your pants off, but I think for a very slow building story that focuses on this like filmmaking crew, it is done well. And what I loved most about this book is the writing. I think that the writing was immaculate, and I will definitely pick up the first book this author wrote, because yeah, this writing style was just the best. Did it need 600 pages? Not so sure about that. But I really did enjoy this, and as I said, I give it 4 stars. I just would say that you have to keep in mind that this is very slow moving, and you do not get a lot of like the haunted school that you might want. We're almost there. Now there's 2 more books I finished. The first one is The Hollow Places by Kingfisher. After being quite disappointed with my Darcy Coates book, I thought I want something that will be scary, at least a little bit. So I decided to go with this horror book by Kingfisher. I had previously read Adalyn Bone by this author and really loved it, so I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna give it a try and see whether it works for me, and it actually did. I actually really enjoyed this book. Now basically in this one we are following a girl. Do you see the connection? But actually this is a grown woman. Like, she's getting divorced right now. She's in her 30s and she's like really run out of her luck. She doesn't have like a good job, and so she decides to move back with her uncle, who has this museum of curiosities. They call it the Wonder Museum for short. It has like a really long official title as well, and there's a lot of like taxidermy and just weird random stuff in that museum. But our main character has always loved this place since she was there when she was a child, so she actually feels quite good about going back there. But then her uncle needs surgery because he has knee problems, and she's left with the museum alone and she has to take care of it. And on one of the first days of that, she actually realizes that there is a hole in the second floor. She doesn't really know where it came from, but when she crawls through, she finds herself in a different world. And she goes and gets the barista from the coffee shop next door, who's actually one of her friends. He's gay, and yeah, that just, you know, exploring this together. They're going to this different world together. And that's basically the first half of the book, is this like super creepy and just eerie and weird universe place where they end up when they crawled through the hole. And I love that part. It actually really reminded me of an adult version of Rules for Vanishing, because you have that same idea of like being somewhere completely different and having to stick to rules you don't quite know, and you don't know what will happen if you don't stick to these rules. And it had just very similar atmospheres in that world building and just the feeling of the world, and I loved that. But then after this half, we actually have a change in the story, and after that it wasn't quite as good anymore. It was still entertaining and I love the main character. This book actually has quite a bit of humor as well, because this main character obviously is a little bit pissed off by her divorce and stuff like that. And so when she goes into this strange world, there is one rule that they're not supposed to think about something in particular, because then it will come and get them. And so while trying not to think about the creepy things that are going on around her, she's trying to like think of things that just take up her mind. So for example, she thinks about how horrible people can be in fanfiction forums and stuff like that. So it's actually quite funny, and I think it's quite relatable, because, you know, your mind does fucked up things if you get really scared. And yeah, I just really enjoyed that. So overall, I gave it 4 stars. I had a lot of fun with this book, and even though the ending wasn't like my super favorite, I still felt like the first half and all the creeps of that first half definitely made up for it. And yeah, I just had a good time. And then the last book was actually a reread, and that is Monstress Volume 5 by Marjorie and Sana Takeda. And I wanted to get back into this, so I decided to reread the last volume I had read before, which is Volume 5, to then get into Volume 6 and 7, which I will talk about at the beginning of my November wrap-up. But yeah, I reread this one. It is great. I love it. I did give it 4 stars initially, but honestly, the more I read of this series, the whole series just moves slowly up to 5 stars, because the more you get into it, the more you get to know the characters, the more it all means to you. And I hope that when Volume 8 comes out, I will have time to reread the whole series, because I think then it will be even more of an experience. But yeah, I just love this graphic novel series. I think it's absolutely fantastic. The art style is just amazing. Just making sure that there's no dead bodies or something. It is so beautiful, and yeah, the characters are great as well. We're following mainly Micah Halfwolf, who has kind of a demon inside of her, and she lives in this world that is at war, and the war is between the humans and the Arcanics. Micah is part of the Arcanics, and yeah, there's just so much going on. It's high fantasy, a lot of intrigue, a lot of political stuff, a lot of war stuff, and Micah is like honestly just trying to find her way through that. And she has a little fox at her side, a little fox girl, and Kippa does just everything, and Micah would do anything and everything for Kippa, and that's just what pulls you through this series, to be honest, because oh my god. So that would be all the books I have read in October. I hope this video wasn't too long. Let me know what your favorite book of October was. I would love to hear about that. And yeah, have a great day. Leave a like or nice comment. I will talk to you very soon. Bye!